welcome to Chronicles Abroad. I'm Nubia.
And I'm Francis.
So today we are talking to a new expat. How exciting is this? Okay. He has spent many years in Los Angeles, California as a graphic designer, but he is originally from Arizona. And he is a long time vegan who loves to travel. That's a whole different conversation. Currently, he has moved abroad to Stockholm, Sweden. So I would like to introduce Erick Woodley, correct?
Would be.
Woodby, Erick Woodby. Welcome, Erick.
Hello, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for being
Thank you
here.
for being here. So, Erick, let's start with a simple question that we like to ask everybody on the show. How many countries have you visited so far?
Ooh, I think it's about eight. Canada, England, Denmark, Sweden, recently Latvia, Norway, and England. England. Oh, and
Okay,
Spain.
there you go.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. So, what was the ultimate decision to move abroad, let alone to Sweden?
It was completely not expected. I first came here 4 years ago in 2015, just randomly on a trip to Denmark. And a friend from Los Angeles, who's actually from Sweden, suggested that I add Sweden onto my trip. And so I said, sure, why not? And my main focus at that time was Denmark, but I came over to Stockholm and just really felt a connection to it.
So now that you're living there, is it what you thought it would be when you first visited? Because visiting versus living there are two different kinds of experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it's still new for me. I've been here this time for, I think, 6 weeks. And I'm here for sure until the end of December. And then from there, we'll go from there. And yeah, I think I have to leave for 3 months and then I can come back.
That's the hardest part is living, because is that considered an EU country?
It is, yes.
Okay, so for those that are not familiar, it's called how I can never pronounce it. Sheshkin, is that correct?
I think so. Think so. Yeah,
Okay,
Schenken or Schenken. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
something like that, where if you hold a U.S. passport, because we can only really talk about U.S. passport holders, you're only allowed 90 days in the EU, within the EU, and then you would have to leave the country. So in Thailand, we would call those visa runs. We would have to leave the country every 30 days if you were on a tourist visa, and then you would have to return back to the country. But in Europe, it's 90 days. And then when you leave, you have to leave to a non-Sheshkin country. So it's kind of like you have to play this game, this dancing game of when you can be in or out of the country unless you are sponsored by an employer, which is what you're trying to do at this time, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And once you're sponsored, you can actually stay for the duration of the sponsorship or visa, correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right, sweet. So let's go backwards a little bit. What did the process look like to you? Because a lot of our audience members get stuck in what we call the three F's: fair, family, finance. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's start with fear. How did you overcome the fear of potentially moving to another country?
That took 4 years. I wanted to come here for sure after the first visit. But, I came in the summer and I'm from the West Coast, from Arizona originally. So I did come back in the winter a couple times, about 3 times, and said, yeah, I think I can do this. Yeah, I haven't lived in it, but it seems okay as of yet. But yeah, the fear thing for me, it took about 4 years because, I'd been at the same company for a long time. And I just didn't want to do anything where I could jeopardize my financial situation. So, yeah. And the family, that was the easiest. My family's always been pretty supportive of me, and I've always been that one that they say, "Oh, this is Eric. He does this type of thing." So that wasn't too hard. And my friends, came in second as far as they were really supportive. But yeah, the biggest one for me was the fear, was the financial fear. Yeah. Coming from a 9 to 5 and then doing something like this where I'm a freelancer right now.
So what do you think it takes to kind of like get that mindset shift? Because it really is between it's the finances and the family. What we find is, and it's all kind of like it all interplays right with each other. So what do you think it takes to really take that mindset shift to believe that these opportunities are available and that you can actually make a living, doing whatever it is so that you can make that whole expat living a reality?
It sounds new agey, but I think it's faith. It really starts with faith. And I'm not a religious person, but this is the first time, I won't say in my life, but in many years where I'm really having to return back to faith and starting with, what do I believe in? Not, religiously, but, in life, and what do I want? That's the starting point. That's been the starting point for me. Yeah.
Okay. I agree. I think that's the whole part of the travel experience is to have faith that there are more good people in the world than there are bad, which I know personally I've experienced, and to trust yourself. When we are living on autopilot and we don't have to exercise that part of our brain, we don't think about it really. But then making this shift and this move, it's front and center, you know? And so I think that we do have the internal abilities to make these types of moves in our lives, but that fear really just roots us. But kudos to you for like just doing it.
Thank you. And thank you guys. You guys were one of the last pieces in the puzzle for me because I stumbled upon your podcast early summer this year. And it was an opportunity for me to say, oh, there are people out there. There is a community out there. And I kind of knew a little bit, but coming onto your podcast just like blew my mind because, your interviews with other people and your own personal experiences, I was like, okay. They're doing it. They're doing it. And I can do it. I can do it. I can believe in this. And so, yeah. And then I went back to my family and friends and told them I'd made a decision. And they said, well, set a date to do this. And I did. And that's where I'm at right now. So thank you guys.
That is awesome. That is a wonderful and a beautiful testimony. And we are completely and utterly grateful. And I was telling Francis, I was like, this guy, Eric, he's so supportive. We love the fact that you DM'd us and was just like, you said the same exact thing, like, thank you. And those are the messages, the call, the emails are the reason why we continue to do what we do. Because our story is just one piece of a much larger puzzle, right? So to share and to meet and to be able to network with people from all over the world to share their experiences, their stories. And it's just been oh my gosh, the words don't even come out sometimes, right? Because it's just been overwhelmingly just great. We're blessed. We're blessed. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. So I have a question for you.
Yes.
Tell us about being TWV, traveling while vegan.
Well, I've been vegan now for 19 years, so I'm used to that for the most part. As far as in Stockholm, I haven't had an issue. There's always somewhere where I can find food. I've been told that if I had come here maybe in the 80s or the 70s, it would have been a bit more difficult, but it's like any other major city. There's different types of ethnic restaurants, Asian restaurants. There was a Mexican restaurant I went to. I haven't yet tried traditional Swedish food, but yeah, that part is not an issue for me, at least in Stockholm. I've only had that challenge once when I went to Spain, and that was in 2008.
I think it would be difficult. This is just my opinion, right? Because I'm a carnivore, I'm not a vegan. But most Latin American countries would be difficult because they're heavy meat eaters.
Yes, and that's what I came across in Spain. It was a lot of, I think, ham. And
Mm.
so I just stuck with, I think it was like pastries. And I knew it wasn't vegan, but I said, I got to eat and I'm not going to pass out here. So yeah, that was, and it could have been too. I didn't really do my research at the time. So I can't say that it was the country. It was just at the time I got there and I didn't really think about it. And then I just had to struggle through it. And not, struggle's not the right word. I had to make do. So yeah.
Got it. And that was going to lead into the next question, right? It's kind of like, how do you manage countries that have fewer vegan options?
Good question. How do I manage with fewer vegan options? Well, I'm not really a foodie anyway, or that's what I've been told. So I don't really need, the basics are fine with me. And, I'm not really a cook myself. So I'll, just salad I used to joke that, yeah, just give me the parsley on your plate and I'll be good. So, yeah.
It's hard for us to relate. Me and Nubia, we love food. Not that you don't love food, but we'll seek it out. I think that one of the first questions of like going to a different country is like, what's the food scene like over there? What is the food to have?
I think that determines where the hell we go.
Yeah, I need to be better at that. I really do. And I do know there's some vegan restaurants that I think do make traditional Swedish food. I just haven't gotten around to going to them, but I do need to do that.
So, what tips, if you have, what tips do you have for our vegan travelers out there?
The internet is an amazing thing. You can find a lot of tips online. That's really helpful. Um, I don't think you should lead, or this is my personal experience. I have never led with, oh, if they don't have the actual vegan restaurants, I'm not going to go because, yeah, that's not for me, that hasn't been an excuse for me not to travel. And with any food, like I said, I've been a long time vegan, so I always say I can find something on just about any menu. I've never been anywhere where I couldn't find anything because, there's vegetables, there's potatoes, there's bread, so those are options that you have.
Yeah, if we looked at, I think this is a good chance for us to kind of tap into that vegan market a little bit to understand what countries really work best. And to me, I would think Asian countries work best with vegan foods because I know in Thailand, you could eat, well, I don't, the funny thing about it is I'll say noodles, right? And then somebody's like, well, the noodles aren't vegan because they're made with eggs. And I'm like, oh, you're right. I mean, and then I'm like, oh, but what about this bagel? And they're like, bagels have, egg or milk in it. I'm just like, oh man. So the funny thing about it is I guess I'm looking at, I don't know what the vegan means versus like a vegetarian, right? So vegan is like no animal products whatsoever, no byproducts or anything by animal. So it's crazy because when I think about foods, I forget about the additives, right? So you said mashed potatoes, but some people, automatically cook their mashed potatoes with butter. So then that makes it not vegan, right?
Right,
But there's
right.
no butter in Asia at all, and they barely ever use dairy. So I would think that that would be the easiest place to have food because you don't have many, you know, products with egg or butter. However, they eat a lot of eggs.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, my options in places like Stockholm have been restaurants or Thai rest or Asian restaurants, Thai restaurants in particular. I really like Thai food. So yeah, I would agree that Asian food most likely is your best option. But yeah, if you want to do the noodles and even the soups, you have to make sure that they don't have like a fish
Bone
stock
broth.
or yeah,
Hmm.
exactly, yeah. But again, I love to travel, so I would say when I'm traveling, I am okay with being 90, 95% vegan, quotes, air quotes.
Got it. And like you
Yeah.
said, you have to adapt sometimes
Yeah.
because of, and the crazy thing about food, and Francis can attest to this, is, when you're a Westerner, we have this fixation on, I like it like this, right? Or can you cook, like, we have all these stipulations or ways we like our food done. Can I have it well done? Can I have it without this? And yeah, can you add that? In other countries, you can't do especially Thailand. We would sit down and let's say if I wanted the food, but I didn't want the egg because I don't necessarily eat runny eggs. And that would mess my whole meal up because they would be like, what? What do you mean no egg? They cook the way they cook. And there's no way to, no substitutes.
No substitute.
They don't like to, they don't like to deviate from what they know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, when I became vegan, my biggest thing that I wanted to make sure, even amongst my friends and family, because nobody else in my life is vegan. I'm the only one as far as my close friends and family. And I never wanted to be that person that was that person in a restaurant, especially because I knew a couple people like that. And so I try to keep that to a minimum. Like if I can, I'll look at the menu online before I go to a restaurant, or even if I get to a restaurant, because usually going out is a social event and I want to make sure that the focus is on that. And so I'll just, scan the menu quickly when I get somewhere and try to order it without being noticed as much as possible, because I don't want that to be the focus. And I've never been that person that wanted to make other people feel uncomfortable. And then even with the choices at the restaurants, again, for travel in particular, and especially if I don't know the customs, I want to be respectful as possible to the people within the country. Yeah.
Okay, so this is actually a great segue in regards to the culture and living in Sweden. What is something that pleasantly surprised you about it, and maybe what's something that you're a little bit disappointed about? I know you've only been there for 6 weeks, but maybe like your first impression.
From the beginning, when I first came, a lot of people say that the Swedes are somewhat reserved until you get to know them. And for me, at least as of right now, that's not a problem. But because I'm that person, I'm kind of shy and I don't really come out of my shell until you really get to know me. So that part hasn't really bothered me. But I've heard people say, "Oh, well, I've heard the Swedes are really hard to get to know." And I say, "No, my experiences so far is people are pleasant. I've never had a problem if I got lost or I needed directions that anybody was rude to me." Some things, I just actually said this to my sister earlier today, and I did notice it the first time that I was here, is that because the parental leave is compared to the States is really good, you see a lot of men with strollers, like small children, and you don't realize that that's not common until you see it. And that still fascinates me as you get on a subway or you get on the bus or you're even walking down the street and there's a guy with 2 or 3 small kids with him. And you're like, wow, that's pretty fascinating.
It is fascinating, and it really attributes to the quality of life in other countries. We try to really express how the quality of life is so much more advanced in a lot of other places that people wouldn't even know. Like you said, the paternity leave. I don't even think paternity leave exists in America half the time. You don't see many men with young babies. And when you go to other countries, even in Mexico, one thing that I really enjoy is seeing the families, especially out on Saturday and Sundays. I mean, the parks are full of families, and I mean full on 8 to 12 people families, enjoying time together, picnicking, riding bikes, having brunch or lunch or dinner. And it's just a beautiful sight, because we lose that in America. You don't see many families, many men with young babies. You don't see a lot of that camaraderie and community within, a family dynamic anymore.
Right. And that's been new for me. Yeah, because especially, I don't have kids and most of my friends are single or don't have children. And so I don't really notice it. And so, yeah, it's refreshing. Also, nature is big here, and I've been told that that's really big here. And I actually noticed it this time. And although I've been here in the colder months, I'm noticing it a little bit more because, for me coming from especially Los Angeles, 35 degrees, you wouldn't leave your house. And so you see people walking around, you see people on bikes, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool because, I just wouldn't have imagined that people are still out and about when it gets below a certain temperature. And then it's motivation for me to keep going too, because I get up and I start my day and I'm like, okay, there's people outside, they're doing their thing, they're living their lives. So I don't have any excuse to say, oh, it's too cold outside.
Yeah, that's interesting that you said that because when I was living in Japan, when it rains, everyone's in the house. But the Japanese, they have their umbrellas out. I mean, you can barely walk on the sidewalks. It doesn't matter what the weather is, specifically rain, they are out and about. All the umbrellas, which is something I don't see here because people just stay in their house. It's raining, not going out. Sorry, guys.
Well, it's funny to me, Erick, that you would have chosen to move during the winter months. Most people would have done it the opposite, right? Like stay in LA until the winter's over and then maybe go in the spring, early summer. Why? What was the decision to say, okay, I'm going to go right as it's becoming winter? Because you mentioned as we started the interview that you got the first snow.
Yeah.
And coming from
I took
LA
a video of it too.
into snow is like a whole culture shock, is it not?
I've been in the snow before, but yeah, it's still seeing the first snow for me is a big deal. The weather and me coming here, that wasn't connected. It was just more about me wanting to make sure that I made a decision because I've been talking about this for 4 years. And I think it was around March. It was two people that don't know each other, but they were friends of mine. And they said, whenever I need to make a decision that means a lot to me, it's important to set a date. And I said, okay, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea. And I knew in my core that I couldn't live the way I was living for another year. Not that my life was bad, but as far as specifically this decision to do this, I said, I know for sure if I allow myself to wait another year, I may not make the decision. And so when I heard that from them, I was like, okay, I will set a date. Initially, it was the end of September. And then I checked the flights at the time and they were really expensive. And so I was like, all right, let's check some more dates. And then it was the beginning of October. So that's why I chose this time. It was more because I knew for myself that I needed to make a concrete decision.
And I love that you said that, Erick, because when it comes down to it, you just have to do it. That's it.
Yes.
And let the chips fall where they fall. And on top of that, there are communities out here that are going to support you. You're never alone as a solo traveler. You just never, there's too many opportunities to meet people who are on similar journeys as you or who are just ready to embrace you as the newcomer. So I love that you said that. You just got to for lack of a better phrase, pull the trigger.
Yeah, and my biggest thing was, if I don't have work, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. But that's when faith comes back in, and that's where for me I said, well, what can I work with, financially? And I just drafted up a plan, and I was like, okay, I can do this. I I didn't live an extravagant life necessarily in Los Angeles, but there's some things I've had to let go of. I'm not missing a car at all. I do love being in a city where I don't need a car. I love that. Yeah.
I think that's huge, being in a place where it's accessible. I mean, that is a big thing for a lot of people. For me, especially, some people love certain countries that I typically are like, I can never live there because it's not, the walkability isn't as great, nor is the accessibility to, bus or metro or anything like that. If I got to take a taxi everywhere I go or, hire a car or whatever, it's not going to work for me. So that's a big thing too, is accessibility. That's awesome.
And this was more, it's about the move, the plan eventually to land somewhere permanently. But it's opened up a lot of questions for me about, just again, what do I want in life? And And in some ways, really sitting with myself and asking, what have I always really wanted in life? And so, yeah, it's about the, moving to a different country, but it's gotten a lot bigger than that.
Nice. Let me ask you a quick question, because I know our listeners are going to be wondering. So you have your first 90 days. And, I'm a manifester, serial manifester. So I'm going to put it in the atmosphere that you will find employment within these 90 days, and all is going to be beautiful and well. But have you thought about the other side of the coin? What happens at the end of the 90 days if you haven't? What are your thought processes then?
I have. And that's when I go back to, online and podcasts like yours. When I started to hear that people either came back to the US or they went to different countries, I said, okay, there's options here. I don't have to feel like if this doesn't happen in this time, then just give up. And for me, I've already decided that if nothing happens within this time period, I don't want to go back to the US because I want to challenge myself to continue on this journey while, and for me, that means staying out of the US for as long as I can.
Nice. I mean, that's great that you know that there are options. And I think that falls back into the fear, right? People go, well, what if? And I use this saying that we are all one paycheck away from being homeless. I don't care if you make six figures today. If you lose your job tomorrow, you're at risk of becoming homeless. So at the end of the day, you have to step out on faith in yourself and believe that you can do it. And if for whatever reason that it doesn't work out or pan out the way that you anticipated it, it doesn't mean that you failed. It actually means that you succeeded because you did something outside of your norm. You stepped outside of your box and you made the decision to at least try, right? And you can reconnect and go, okay, what didn't work? Why didn't it work? Okay, maybe it didn't work because I didn't do these things or I didn't plan accordingly. And then that way you can create and devise a new plan if you choose to leave again.
I love the quote, the universe rewards the bold.
Yes. And I heard something recently, I'm paraphrasing, but it says settling for good means that you're missing your best. And I don't want to do that with the journey that I'm on right now, for sure.
I love it. It's only going to go up from here.
Yeah.
Trust me. Like we've seen so many different, random things that happen because somebody connected with this person, this situation. And next thing you know, they're doing something that they never thought they'd be doing. And it's bringing them so much fulfillment. So you got to hold on to that faith.
Yeah. And when you mentioned me, sending you a direct message, that was new for me because that's not my norm to do that. And I sat on it for a while. I'm like, no, I don't know what this means. I mean, I'm just sending a random message to two people I don't know. But I did it. And I'm really grateful that I did it because that was going out on faith. And so, yeah. And again, that came again from hearing people say, you just have to reach out. You just have to ask. And, if the person answers, that's great. And if they don't, that's okay too.
Exactly. And we are grateful that you did. So, Erick, we have a new segment to our podcast that we like to call the hot seat.
Hot seat? You gotta let me do some sound effects. I mean, you can't just jump into that. So I gotta be like, or something, we'll work that out.
Go for it, Francis. It's all you, boo.
I mean, that's all I got. Well, go ahead.
Okay. It's just a series of, when I say a series, I mean a couple of questions that are just rapid fire questions.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Coffee, tea, or smoothie?
Coffee.
Beer, wine, or cocktail?
I don't drink.
So none. None of these.
None, yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Francis. I think I cut her off.
That's okay. I'm used to it, It's just part of the thing. Always interrupting people. But anyway, hostel, hotel, or Airbnb?
Airbnb.
Group or solo?
We need to figure this part out.
Group or solo travel?
Solo.
City or countryside?
City.
Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
That took a little while.
Sure, but
those two are probably like this. You're like
neck and neck.
Neck and neck.
Neck and neck, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for the beer, wine, and cocktail. Maybe we got to figure that one out, Francis, because not everybody drinks.
I mean,
that's right.
You inconsiderately put that there.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I could have just picked one instead of just like saying that.
We appreciate your honesty, Erick.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on our show today. We are so thankful that you came on to share your experience. Your story is going to resonate with a lot of people. You're actually one of the first people we've had on the show that is like a brand new expat. So this is like firsthand account in the first 2 months. I think that's huge. No, I think that's huge because that gives people the real, feeling of what you went through before you took that step and where you are now that you've taken that step. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you, Erick.
You're welcome, and thank you. Thank you so much.